The pandemic has turned everyone's life upside down. But for kids, the stress, anxiety, uncertainty around all the change can be particularly hard. As the new book puts it, school's different, friends are different, parents are different too. Those scamps are even crazier than they ever were before. As a father, let me tell you, we were pretty crazy before. The book is called The Insanely Awesome Pandemic Playbook, a humorous mental health guide for kids. And the whole thing is illustrated by an insanely talented seventh grader, Caroline Charlin. There's also an accompanying educational guide for parents and teachers. Joining me now are the authors, Elizabeth Englander, professor of psychology and the executive director of the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center at Bridgewater State University. Katharine Covino is an assistant professor of English at Fitchburg State and a former middle school and elementary school teacher. Elizabeth, Katie, thanks so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Pleasure. Hey, Elizabeth, starting with you, first of all, the book is funny and smart, and I'm not even a tween. I don't think I ever was a tween, but whatever. Kids of all ages obviously are suffering from the pandemic. Why did you decide to focus on 8 and 12-year-olds, not younger, not older? Why that age demographic?
Well, that age demographic, I think, has been particularly impacted. Younger kids are more likely to be still going to school, or at least going to school a couple days a week. Mm-hmm. And teenagers are a little bit better able to cope emotionally and socially with having to use distance learning. But that age group is really vulnerable. And I think that we focused on them because we knew that they were going to be the age group that really needed help.
You know, when I read, Katie, when I read some of the reviews of the book, anytime I read anything that says it's humorous, I say, I'll be the judge. But I have to say, it is really funny. Who of the two of you is the funny one? Are you both, or who is
Katie.
It, Katie?
Well,
that is okay. Okay, but it really is funny, I should say. So I wrote down some of the stuff, some of the many things you address: parents Zoom bombing, screen time, social isolation, boredom, anxiety, and depression. If I can pick a few. Katie, starting with you, tell me exactly what the issue is and how you address it. Let's start with screen time, because that's obviously an issue that confronts every 8 to 12-year-old and their parents. What's the problem, and how did you address it?
So the problem is that there's too much, right? There's too much screen time at the moment, or maybe there's a lot more than there used to be. And so how do you address it? Well, the first thing that you can do is talk about, eye strain is one of the things that we talk about in the chapter. So we make jokes about looking all day at the computer and having it being chained to you, or having your iPad be your new BFF. So if we are looking too much at the computer, we can get blue light glasses, we can take a break outside. And I think one of the issues, at least for my kids, is that when they're looking to take a break from screens, the thing that they want to do, Jim, is more screen, right? They want to play Minecraft, they want to chat with their friends, they want to watch Netflix. So how can we encourage them to handle the screen time that they have? And how can we encourage them to take a break from screens when we know that they need it? Those are two of the issues related to screen time and two of our suggestions involving.
And the ones, Elizabeth, that I assume are most concerning to parents are the anxiety and depression thing. On our radio show, I can't tell you how many parents call and talk about watching their kids sitting there trying to do remote learning, and it's breaking their heart, and it breaks ours as well. How do you address that in the book?
Well, that was, in a way, some of the most important parts of this book. What we really wanted to do was we wanted to give the kids themselves some tools that they could use to begin to understand and think about their own feelings and address it. We wanted them to have the language, but we didn't want to scare them. And that's really where the humor comes in, is we wanted them to think about, what does it mean? What does anxiety mean? What does depression mean? And what can you do about it? If you're 10 years old, there are things you can do about it. But the things aren't always intuitive. Like Katie mentioned, kids might naturally gravitate towards more screen time. We wanted them to understand that if they did other things, that might actually make them feel better.
Is there, I don't know if you have enough time to know, Katie, do you have any feedback yet about whether or not what appears to an older person, me, and you two too, by comparison to the tweens, is this getting through to these kids? Can a book change their mindset about strife they're dealing with?
I have to say, one of my favorite reviews of the book on Amazon is from a woman who said that her child was giggling all the way through it, right? So it's not just serious, serious advice from serious people. We have to layer the research and the science and the humor together to make kids want to read it, because when they want to read it and when they want to read it more than once, then those lessons sink through. A colleague of mine told me that.
And we did do some research on this. Katie and I did do some research on this technique. And what we did is Katie read it to groups of 9-year-olds, and then we actually tested them to see what they remembered. And there's particular ways you have to use to test kids that age, but to see if they retained the lesson. These books are educational, at their core. That's the whole purpose. And the funny part is just what makes them want to read it.
And by the way, I mentioned there's this playbook for parents and teachers, which is a supplement, which is really helpful, telling them how to use this and work with their kid. But, Elizabeth, I'm not sure if it was the head of the mass teachers that mentioned this yesterday here, but obviously there are one set of problems the kid has when they're home with all these issues during a pandemic. But either she or somebody said to me in the last 24 hours, there's a whole other set of problems when the kid goes back to school. We're acting as if, you go back to school, everything's great. Is that, you're both nodding in agreement, Elizabeth, is that next on the Elizabeth-Katie agenda or no?
That is next. So actually last June at the university, we started a project called When the Kids Come Back, where we gave schools guidance about how to handle all of the emotional and behavioral issues that were going to arise when the kids went back to school. But at that point, Jim, we thought they were going to go back to school in September.
Yeah, of course.
So it's really a different kettle of fish now. These kids aren't out of school 3 or 4 months. They're out of school for a year. And all of the social and emotional stuff is going to be huge. That's what we're all going to be talking about this year. So, yeah, we have a sequel in the works. We're already working on it very hard. And the idea is to give kids tools for some of the things that are going to come up, some of the fears and the anxieties and the sort of weird feelings you have when you go back to normal, even though you've been craving normal. It still feels weird. So all of that stuff is going to have to be dealt with. Absolutely.
Well, I'm waiting for it. And I'm sure they are too. You both did fine work. Elizabeth and Katie, it's great to meet you, and congratulations on the books.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
The books again are the Insanely Awesome Pandemic Playbook, a humorous mental health guide for kids, and the educational guide for parents and teachers.